Mr. O's Music.
Hello you lot, and welcome to Mr. O's Music. I'm Mr. O, and this is music I like. This week we're looking at a pianist and vocalist called Ben Folds. And specifically, an album of his called Lonely Avenue. Ben Folds first came to prominence in 1993 as the frontman of the alternative rock group Ben Folds 5, which consisted confusingly of only three people: himself on piano and vocals, Robert Sledge on bass, and Darren Jesse on drums. Their first few albums are aggressive and fiery, with Ben sometimes seeming to want to punch the piano into the floor. By their third album, however, they were developing a more mature and shaded variety of songs, and it was shortly after this in 2000 that the band split up. Ben Folds went on to release 4 solo albums, with Lonely Avenue being the last of these in 2010. Since then, he is reunited with Ben Folds 5 for one album, created another solo album with the chamber group Y Music, and has been appointed artistic advisor to the National Symphony Orchestra at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. Lonely Avenue is a unique album in the Ben Folds discography in that it's the only one in his catalogue where he is not the principal lyricist. For this album, he asked the novelist Nick Hornby to provide lyrics, and this produces some really fascinating musical structures as Ben tries to find ways around some of the problems that Nick creates by effectively, in some cases, writing poetry rather than verse-chorus lyrics, and in others, writing structurally something that Ben clearly doesn't feel works. It's fascinating to read the poems in the booklet as they were written and see how in some cases Ben ignores the structure, getting rid of a chorus where he doesn't feel it works, turning what was meant to be a verse into a chorus, etc. I should warn potential listeners that in a couple of places some of the tracks on this album are not without some swearing, so yes, that's a thing. Anyway, enough of all that, let's get to the music. And as with the most recent of these videos, I'll skip over many of the tracks in order to give myself opportunity to really talk properly about a few. The really interesting thing about this album is that, much like The Marriage at Cana, Ben Folds opens with, in my opinion, the weaker songs and leaves the best to last. And I should say, anyone aiming to produce a stunning GCSE or even A-level composition could do a hell of a lot worse than studying the songs at the back end of this album. The first track, called Working Day, is one that perhaps we can all relate to in some form. It's about the grief that content creators receive online. Keyboard driven, it's a good opener to the album with clever lyrics in which the author first believes himself to be an internet genius, then a loser, but ultimately it's not one of the strongest on the album, so let's move on. Picture Window is a beautiful song about a mother and her ill child in what is clearly meant to be St. Thomas's Hospital in central London on New Year's Eve. Opening with piano, Ben relates a desperately sad story about the hope that is presented to them by the beautiful view over the Thames, the fireworks, while the mother knows that all this beauty and hope is, from her perspective at least and that of her child, in vain. The music is so simple, for most of it it's just 4, 1 and 5, but the use of an oscillating ostinato in the right hand producing 9ths and 7ths results in a really lovely ballad. It's a painfully beautiful treatment with lovely soaring strings and a gorgeous instrumental in the middle. The fact that there's no resolution lyrically, with this being mirrored perfectly in the music with an imperfect cadence at the end, is just right. Levi JONSTO'N's Blues is a great track, although it hasn't perhaps aged that well. It places you in the shoes of Levi, who was at one point engaged to Sarah Palin's daughter Bristol, clearly without his full cooperation. The curse-laden chorus is apparently based on a Facebook post that he made, which was unsurprisingly quite quickly taken down, but not before the press had eaten it up. Very angry stuff. Doc Pomus has a wonderful chugging piano part which rolls us along enthusiastically, but also somewhat ironically, given the words are about a man in a wheelchair sitting in a hotel lobby over a period of years writing down all that he hears. It's one of those moments where if you just read the lyrics and imagine the mood of the song that you would create, this is not what you would come up with. Your Dogs is a great example of Ben messing with the structure that Nick has set up. He's clearly given him a bridge in the lyrics, which Ben then turns into a verse by stretching the 3 lines out to 4, while the subsequent verse turns into the bridge. Another keyboard-led song with driving energy. Practical Amanda is a lovely piano ballad, a love song to someone who, for instance, has the ability to see a mess of a house and see it as a fixer-upper. Someone who can see a messed up man with no ability to do anything for himself and see he also has promise. Nick Hornby amusingly writes in the sleeve notes of this beautiful string-laden song, "My wife's name is Amanda. She is practical. Apart from these strange coincidences, this song is not autobiographical in any way. Claire's Ninth is where this album really takes off for me. A desperately sad song about a girl who is stuck in the middle of a messy divorce. As the parents join for a birthday celebration, it all goes wrong with inevitable one-upmanship from the outset. A simple chordal accompaniment with a chromatic turnaround before the chorus, and sevenths and ninths throughout tug at the heartstrings. The chorus hears the parents' perspective, in which they clearly really want the best for poor Claire, but they can't get beyond the pain that this relationship and its breakup has produced. The piano instrumental in the middle is just beautiful, with a 5-note falling ostinato played in triplets so that it meanders in and out of sync with the chords underneath. The held chord of flat 7 with added 7th just before the final chorus is amazing, and fittingly, the song ends unresolved, fading out over a chord of 2. Password is a bluesy take on someone, probably a groupie, who has been stalking their subject and thinks they know everything about them. It turns out they don't know quite as much as they thought. The chorus is fascinating, literally spelling out some of the pertinent facts in letters. The bridge is particularly interesting harmonically, with glockenspiel outlining very strange chord changes. From Above is a great poem, questioning what the chances are that we ever really find our soulmates, how likely it is that we do perhaps meet them, maybe multiple times, but that, for whatever reason, we never actually get together. The music supports the lyrics brilliantly, not overly sentimental, but with a driving pulse throughout. Ben Folds has been married and divorced 4 times, and so perhaps this spoke to him personally. Whatever the reason, he makes sure the lyrics are all able to be heard, with the slightly more angry moments together with wailing female vocals left for the instrumentals. It's a somewhat confused song, with the lyrics concluding, "Maybe that's why books get written, maybe that's why songs get sung, maybe we owe the unlucky ones." And the music balances itself on the fence perfectly between sentimentality, jollity, and anger. Saskia Hamilton is lyrically genius. Written from the perspective of a teenage boy who has a crush on a poet simply because of her perfect name. And Saskia Hamilton is a real person, apparently. If I were Nick Hornby, I'd be somewhat disappointed by the way Ben Folds set these words, because a lot of the clever lines do get lost in the music. As a musician, however, I can only bow down at the utterly brilliant musical treatment the lyrics get in this song. The sheer adolescent energy from the outset is clear. Texturally, most of the song is monophonic, with a forward drive and insane percussion punctuating the track. Ben Folds asked a popular teenage YouTuber of the time, Charlie McDonald, to produce a video for this song, and his use of kitchen percussion as visual foley is superb. Rhythmically, it's all over the place, with lots of changes of time signature, and this serves to heighten the excitement and adolescent angst. As the song progresses, the catchy keyboard riff becomes more prominent, towards the end gathering strong fourth overtones and repeating over and over as the band get more and more irate behind it. For those who know Ben's early angry works, this is the closest we get to them on this album, and being reminded of them in this way, I almost wish that maybe I'd chosen a different album to highlight this man's talent. But this is only a fleeting thought, because of this final track. Belinda is a beautiful ballad to a lost love, and Nick Hornby in the liner notes explains it best. There are a lot of musicians who are locked into unfortunate relationships with ex-wives and ex-lovers simply through having written hit songs about them during the first flush of romance. And then it all goes wrong, but they have to sing about them forever anyway. The lyrics for this song are particularly interesting and provided Ben Folds with a somewhat unique problem, which he outlined in an email to Nick Hornby, which is also helpfully printed in the liner notes. Dear Nick, Belinda has been a mother effer, but I think I cracked the code. You gave me a specific assignment if you think about it. The song had to sound like an old hit song. It wouldn't be believable to have the chorus be a bastardization of an old classic if the melody weren't classic. So I wanted to make the chorus sound as if it was actually a huge hit that we all remember. And then you've quoted the chorus of this fabled hit song in the second line of the verse. So I had to figure out a way to quote the melody without doing the ultimate no-no by giving away the chorus in the verse. Guys like Burt Bacharach don't even like to give away the highest note of the chorus anywhere earlier in the song. Anyway, I worked it out by making the chord beneath the quote a weaker version in the verse and taking out one line pre-chorus so that the chorus hits at a surprise time. So even though you've heard the melody, it was in such a different context that it still works. It was like a hell crossword puzzle, but I think we made a good song. The verse is indeed very static harmonically, with a dominant pedal throughout, and the chorus is convincingly classic. The introduction of wonderfully warm strings and double acoustic guitars in each channel signals its arrival, and the melody and harmonies complement each other perfectly, with a simple but effective descending conjunct bass line and lush harmonies above. The wonderful chord at the end of each chorus, flat 6 with an added 7th and 9th, for those of you keeping score, adds a querulous element that's just right. It's interesting that he mentions Bacharach in his email. He clearly is trying to channel the master in this song, even if he doesn't quite go so far as to use a flugelhorn, and it would have fitted so well. The main instrumental has a wonderfully optimistic and yet wistful feel, with strings weaving around a syncopated rising chord sequence with rising keyboard sound effects mimicking an airplane, before returning for a final verse and chorus in which there is at least finally an admission of the man's own guilt in having left his true love for a fleeting tryst. We are played out with an even more energetic version of the instrumental, which seems to rise and rise, a bit like the end of A Day in the Life, Beatles by the way, before we settle somewhat abruptly, reminding us that there is no real satisfactory resolution to this situation. And that's almost it, apart from the fact that about a minute of silence later, we are suddenly thrown back into the studio with Ben using the lyrics of the Belinda chorus to channel Little Richard in a bizarre 12-bar blues version complete with trademark falsetto, showing, I guess, that they clearly did have some real fun recording this album. Why do I love this album so much? Particularly when I've been somewhat dismissive of the earlier part of it. I think it's the fact that it shows someone who is clearly a very natural musician. Anyone who's been to one of Ben's live shows and seen him make up songs on the spot will testify to his innate musicianship without a second thought. But it shows not only that, but also someone who thinks deeply about the structure, the craftsmanship of songwriting, who isn't afraid to edit and adjust, and who is probably one of those perfectionists who is never really happy with the end product. That, for me, is the sign of a true artist, and it's something I try every day to get my pupils to emulate. Do have a listen to this album when you get a chance, and particularly if, like me, you have a soft spot for the slightly anarchic sound of Saskia Hamilton, go back and listen to some of his earlier albums, like Whatever and Ever, Amen. Thanks for watching. Do please subscribe, comment, click the bell. It's the best way to know when the next video arrives, and to encourage me, of course, to make it. See you next time.
Mr.'s music, Mr.'s music.
Do it. One take. Ben Folds first came to prominence in 1993 at the front... Start again. An album called Lonely Avenue. Hold on, I need to go and get the stuff. This one right here. Where's my remote gone? God damn it, I've lost my remote. For this album, he asked the novelist Nick... Oh, God, start again. The frontman of the alternative group... Damn it. And he has been appointed artistic advisor to the National Symphony Orchestra at the Kennedy Space Center. Not the Space Center. God damn it, that would be insane. Why would he be in the Space Center? I'm an idiot.